What's up, everybody? It is Kellen Nitro for Nitro Maniac TV's Wrestling Unlimited coming at you with, I have no idea what we're going to title this, but it's a very interesting concept. On the other end of the line, it's TL. How you doing, my friend?
TL is in the house, and I'm not feeling too bad. Not feeling bad at all. How you
Right?
doing?
Pretty good. And this all will stem out of a big debut that happened for us Canadians this past week. It was, it's going to sound so petty by nature, but it was the debut of live NXT broadcasts on Sportsnet 360, because of the way CRTC worked and everything and whatever. We didn't get our NXT until a 1 hour condensed episode on Fridays for the longest time. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, well, actually, probably not out of nowhere, it was a very planned move by Rogers and WWE, who owns the WWE rights, I should say, in Canada. It is 2 hours simulcasted from whatever's on USA in the evenings on Wednesday nights, going head to head with AEW, which is in the same time slot. And the debut of such show was this week. And TL, this is the first time you've watched NXT in a long time, and you had a bunch of feedback that you wanted to give me. And I figured, dude, this is a video quality, or this is the need for a video, I should say, and a podcast type quality type program. So go nuts, my friend.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
I mean, you are absolutely right. This is the chance to actually have the side by side between AEW, which in Canada is on TSN, same
yes.
time as Sportsnet here in Canada is showing NXT. So you actually finally get this Wednesday night wrestling war live in Canada for the first time, as before we were only getting AEW. And NXT just kind of fell by the wayside because, as you said, it was condensed, it was shown on a different day. And by the time you saw it, it was like, man, whatever, back, like furthest back burner TV. But now we get it live. Now I'm seeing it. And the thing is, watching the takeovers from, let's say, 2 to 5 years back, those were really special. And sometimes those even beat out the WWE pay-per-views that they were preceding. And so now we get a chance to watch NXT this show and be like, okay, let's see how this looks. And the thing is, um, what I saw was confusing. It was just bizarre. They had a guy who's wearing a top hat asking people to do the Ted DiBiase challenge, and they knew it was a challenge, and he just kept giving away thousands of dollars. And I'm like, what is the point of this? Is this guy supposed to fight anybody at some point? Am I supposed to be threatened by him? Is he supposed to be a champion at some point? What is this? I think his name is Cameron Grimes. Can you help me out with that one, Kellen?
That's right. It's Cameron Grimes. So the storyline with Cameron is he was a North Carolina redneck who made it big on the stonks. So he cashed in on that AMC stock. He cashed in on that Bitcoin. He cashed in on you name it.
Okay, so I understand that that would be a timely thing and something that's happening in our lives right now. How does that relate to wrestling? How is that supposed to make me say, hey, I want to watch this guy in the ring in a match? What is the point of this?
I don't think there is not any, to tell you the truth, with Cameron Grimes. He's one of the comedic elements of NXT.
Well, he's very unwelcomed and we don't need it whatsoever. But I mean, just looking at the show overall, he's just one of example of like what happened to NXT. And this is a very, very big question because in thinking of NXT takeovers from years previous, you see all the talent that came out of NXT, and just talent is the word. They were talented guys and girls that just came up through the system, and we've seen them now, and they've just all withered. And you're like, what are they doing? Why is NXT their developmental for wrestlers that like fill the mid and lower cards?
Mm-hmm.
What is the point of this? I mean, big names that were on the takeover. I'm talking about like Nakamura, Bobby Roode, Finn Balor. Alistair Black, Velveteen Dream. I forgot all of his names. We'll just call him Andrade. Like, there's just the women's wrestlers too. I mean, Ember Moon, Shayna Baszler, and not Io Shirai. Who's the other one? I think she just completely left the States.
Kairi Sane.
Kairi Sane.
She apparently retired. I'm doing the air quotes here. Retired from pro wrestling, but there's a strong rumor happening that she's going to be part of the big New Japan Pro Wrestling Stardom unveil later this year once they start having people back in buildings in Japan and that stuff as kind of the major get that New Japan has got to kind of launch their women's division. That's going to be probably third or fourth quarter in 2021.
Okay. But also, someone who returned to Japan from being in NXT was Kenta.
Yes. Hideo Itami. Yeah.
Yes, Hideo Itami, who for some reason I have his t-shirts, but it was a gift from my brother. But just there's like a pack full of names of these people that were really big during the takeovers that have turned out to be absolutely nothing on the WWE roster, which begs the question, what is going on with NXT? And all right, the tag teams as well. AOP, gone.
Yeah, they're gone.
The Revival now in AEW. American Alpha. One is retired from injury. The other one is a Shorty G of some kind. Who are the guys that look like they made them look like the Legion of Doom and it ruined them forever? The Ascension.
Oh, the Ascension. Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah, they're completely gone. The New Day used to call them the Lucha Booty. It was, I think they've changed now.
Lucha House Party?
Yes, now the Lucha House Party, but I guess before it was
they're on SmackDown. They're on SmackDown. They're kind of mid-card on SmackDown now, so.
Right, but I guess their initial phase was the Lucha Dragons.
Yes.
And they were an NXT specialty feature thing, and they're all gone now. Enzo and Cass, tag team, gone.
Oh, they're long gone, yeah.
But that's what I mean, though.
Long gone to the point that no other promotion will look at them at this point, so.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the Vaudevillains or whatever they were called.
That's, yeah, another great example. Aiden English was a commentator and then got let go in the COVID cuts last year, and Simon Grimm is now fighting on these independent ultimate fight style blood sport cards that GCW is putting on. Like,
really?
there's he might fight John Moxley by the end of the year at this point. He's really good on those cards, which is crazy.
That is insane. And John Moxley loves to do a blood match for some reason.
Mr. Gimmick match.
Gah. Well, you know what? I saw that coming a mile away just because when you ever watched him wrestle in WWE as Dean Ambrose, he had such limited moves and he kept doing that thing where he'd grab the ropes and bounce back with a lariat, and you're like, is that all you got, really?
That's the second rope, kind of like I think it's like a great Muda move set out of Muda's career or something like that. But that was
but low-key, he doesn't use that in AEW, does he?
Not very rarely. I mean, he may bust it out once in a while. Oh, he won't be able to use it coming up here in a couple of weeks because it's a exploding barbed wire death match. There ain't going to be no ropes. It's going to be barbed wire. You try that on barbed wire, you're going to get hurt.
Okay, so that's a good segue because we're talking about this war between, I put air quotes, war between AEW and NXT. AEW they're supposed to be presenting themselves as a top tier show.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to go like as mainstream as possible to be like the Nitro to the Raw. But NXT is the developmental. So now that they're on par with each other on Canadian TV for us viewers, because we live here, how is NXT going to exactly compete with AEW when AEW is doing stuff like that and NXT has Cameron Grimes or Johnny, what's his name? Johnny Wrestling?
Johnny Gargano taking on Dexter Loomis. Yeah, like
yes,
the opening
and he
match
has his little
past, Wednesday, I should say.
Yes, and he has this little faction, and I'm like, what is this? I was like, what am I even looking at?
So this is going to be tough for me to kind of put together here, but it is just we'll take your what we just talked about there and put it out there. Loomis and Gargano are feuding. Gargano is a heel now. Gargano has a heel faction, and it's basically that's comedy, and the same with Cameron Grimes. It's comedy. Uh, yeah, I agree with you that watching this past Wednesday's NXT was the first full weekly NXT show I've seen in a long time. Probably the first one in 2021 that I watched at least. And it really didn't move the needle for me whatsoever. And you can look at the ratings. You can look at like the AEW versus NXT ratings in the States, where AEW just keeps constantly beating them by about 100, 200 thousand viewers each week. And you can tell that fans are going towards the more sports-based product versus the more entertainment-based product. And I the problem is, TL, is I can't remember the point in time where it shifted, because remember, NXT was the sports-based brand of WWE for like the longest time, like since they started back in 2013, 2014. But now it's like, man, they've gone more entertainment than anything else. And don't forget, NXT is the head developmental brand for WWE. So this is their AAA affiliate. This is their AHL. This is their G League. If you want to take
G
the
League.
yeah, you want to take the NBA philosophy. I think that's what they call their summer league, is the G League now or something like that, because
No, no, no.
Gatorade.
The G League is their developmental.
There we go. Yeah. So it's the same thing as NXT. Then it's their AAA affiliate. It's their developmental, you name it. And other
Exactly. But the
other
thing
than
is,
other than and I'll give them this about this past week's NXT. I liked Shirai and Zoe Stark. I thought that was really good. It made Zoe Stark seem like a legit contender because she's a new signee to NXT. So we'll see what happens later on for the year and that stuff.
okay, so I'm gonna cut you off on that
Okay,
one
go for it.
because the thing is, Io Shirai is supposed to be the women's champion, and to me, looking at this thing for the first time ever, I don't know who the other girl is whatsoever. So I'm like, I see the little vignette thing that they did where Regal says, "Hey, you get a non-title shot at the champion to show what you can do."
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like Io Shirai is supposed to be the women's champion, and the lineage of NXT women's champions is pretty. It has a pretty high bar because it has basically almost everybody from that the four horsewomen, um, Asuka, and even just lately Rhea Ripley, who got to be part of WrestleMania just for having that belt, wrestling against Charlotte Flair. So now Io Shirai is a champion, and she looked on par with this girl who's brand new. I'm like, but if you're the champion, not that it should be a cakewalk, but it should not be an on par match with somebody who comes out of nowhere. That makes Io Shirai look weak.
Yeah, I can see that. And the second thing that I really liked off of NXT this week was I thought that the street fight between Santos Escobar and Karrion Kross was phenomenal. That they had that was kind of their television main event before Adam Cole walked out, and they're doing the Undisputed Era split. But just to rewind back to Shirai, I could see that because what happened at the end of the match was just kind of like a respect angle thing between Shirai and Stark, where it's like, okay, you gave me a good fight, whatever, but I'm still the champ, and you have much to learn, young Padawan, basically. And all of a sudden, Tony Storm walks out, who's one of the top heels on NXT right now. She wants a shot from or with Shirai for the belt, and because they're building up. And here's the thing too, TL, is I didn't see an announcement for when the next takeover is, so I'm not sure if they're even doing one WrestleMania weekend, if any NXT matches are going to be a part of WrestleMania this year like they were last year, or what the deal is. So it's all very I could see the confusion for somebody who cold turkey walked in, because us who have sort of kind of followed this off and on, kind of watch this, and it's like, well, no wonder they're losing on Wednesday nights. Just the continuity is not really. It's an easier watch than Raw, but man, a lot of the same tendencies that Raw has is starting to creep its way into NXT right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that it being the developmental league NXT, I guess they're supposed to be preparing the guys for what they're gonna see on Raw, because really there was that disconnect from NXT going into the main roster. So like Nakamura was a big thing at NXT, he gets to the main roster, meh, and same with, well, you name it, everybody. Finn Balor is back in NXT now, so he's almost like completely forgotten from the main roster.
That's pure ratings grab. That's just because they're competing with AEW. This is they saw the ratings bump last summer with Charlotte coming back to NXT for a little bit as the NXT champion or NXT Women's Champion, and that run. And then the fact that they think like upcoming next week they're going to have Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez take on Baszler and Nia Jax for the women's title, or women's tag team titles, I should say. And yeah, that's just pure ratings. That's the move that they have to make to compete.
Here's why I don't quite believe that. Charlotte Flair has been presented as the best women's wrestler in WWE, which is debatable, and I am biased to wifey Sasha Banks, but she was presented as like the absolute best. Finn Balor had nothing going on and just kind of seemed to slither back into NXT. So I don't think that would be on par with the same kind of ratings pop, because it seems like it's the one star that they absolutely believe in coming to NXT. That's a ratings pop. But the guy that they have no idea what to do with, and him just going back to NXT, that just seems like they don't believe in Finn Balor.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it that way, for sure. And then there's the other side of the coin. That's well, if Balor was on the main roster, he would be languishing in the mid card. So at least him in the upper card of NXT is a better spot for him, and a better spot for Finn Balor fans, because at least he's fighting for a major title, right?
Yes, but that means that NXT has failed as a developmental league, because the biggest star that they have in NXT would only be a mid-carder in the main roster, be it SmackDown
yeah,
or Raw.
It's failed as a developmental league right now because it's not a developmental league. It's counter programming to AEW.
Yes, sort of. I guess so. You know what though? I kind of buy into the fact that they are like completely run independently. I don't see them like grabbing things from each other's shows or trying to counter stuff with each other's shows, because they are run very, very differently.
Yeah, I mean, uh, it, it'll be interesting the first time I get a chance to actually do a sit down and watch both programs, quote unquote, live as they happen. Because because of the nature of availability and everything, I had to watch both programs off of PVR this week, just to catch up on it and whatever. But the first time I get like a Wednesday night off, to sit down and watch AEW and NXT during the 6 to 8 p.m. time slot here in the Mountain Time Zone. Times may vary where you are. It'll be very interesting to see what they do, because there were bits on AEW this week, like there always is, where not a lot is happening, and you're wondering what's going on the other channel, and subsequently you watch NXT, and yeah, there's bits like you said about Cameron Grimes trying to do the Ted DiBiase parody with the money and stuff like that, and the whole the lead up to the main event too, where you had Escobar's goons and that stuff kind of protecting the van outside, and why did we
That
need to
looked
see
hilarious.
that?
That was hilarious. Those guys aren't even as tall as the SUV that they were blocking.
No, exactly. Yeah, they got him paired with Karrion Kross right now, who is a former NXT champ from last year, and Karrion goes, I think, a legit 6'5", 275. So like he's a super heavyweight. and Santos Escobar is a former WWE Cruiserweight champion. So there's a size difference. um, uh, a real I, like
Well,
it makes no
speaking,
sense.
well, that's exactly how I felt watching on AEW. What's his name against Phoenix?
Oh, Lance Archer.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt in that one. I'm like, one guy's clearly a cruiserweight, and the other guy's really like the size of test.
But that's
Oh,
yeah, but again, they qualified it by saying the winner gets a spot in the ladder match at the pay-per-view.
that doesn't qualify it. You have a junior against a senior. You know what I mean? Like, that looks so weird on TV. It
Well,
didn't
there's
look like real.
but AEW has publicly declared that there's no limits with their weight classes or anything like that. That anybody basically can challenge for any belt on there, with the exception they have the women's division kind of off on their own thing right now. But it wouldn't surprise me if they start experimenting with like intergender stuff and everything, just because they have performers on that roster that have worked intergender matches before, and some darn good ones, right? But that's always been the edict of AEW since day one, is that you don't want to take the old X Division trope from TNA and say it's not about weight limits, it's no limits, but it kind of is that sort of approach that they've got right now with AEW. With NXT, it's a blender. It's kind of blender booking right now. It's kind of
Honestly,
run amok over there. So
yes, because honestly, looking at that show for the first time live, it was a complete mess. Like, NXT has completely lost their way. They don't. It seems like they don't know what they're trying to accomplish. It just the fact of Cameron Grimes. Like, you have to ask the question: if you're looking at this person, why do I want to watch them wrestle? And what is so interesting that I may be inclined to pay money to see them in the ring? They've completely lost sight of that, because that Cameron Grimes thing, there's no way you could look at him and say, that's interesting. I want to watch this. Let's keep watching. I want to pay to watch him wrestle. Absolutely not.
So using that, let's do a quick comparison here. Who would you pay on NXT to watch from who you've seen this past Wednesday?
The Undisputed Era, because now that they're falling apart and everything, I really do want to watch that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a money thing. That's a money angle that has been built up for a long time, and now we're finally starting to get the payoff for this. It might be the one of the few NXT programs that makes the main WrestleMania card is an Adam Cole versus Kyle O'Reilly thing, which would be phenomenal. That going forward, it might be rumored to be on the undercard. I don't know. We'll wait and see. Just because of again, there's a lack of a takeover announcement that usually happens on Mania weekend, which makes me think they're going to do the same thing like they did last year with one or two NXT matches being thrown onto the main 2-night WrestleMania card, because God knows you need to fill content for 2 nights. So,
And I think that's the key right there. That's why there is no takeovers, because they're going to do a 2-night WrestleMania. So just
right.
tag up a couple of NXT matches.
Yeah, so Cole and O'Reilly, and then maybe you have Io Shirai defend the NXT Women's title in some sort of gimmick 6-woman ladder thing or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Or
they've already done that. They literally already did that, didn't they? Or
yeah,
was that War Games?
they did that last year at In Your House, which was NXT Takeover on the WWE Network. So
Yes, and that was kind of cool.
that was where Io won the belt, actually. But there we go. So
In terms of who I'd actually pay to watch, like, okay, you did just mention Io Shirai. Let's put that under the microscope a little bit. Is she as interesting or as athletic or as exciting as Asuka? No. How about Charlotte Flair? No. How about Sasha Banks? No. How about Becky Lynch? No. How about Bianca Belair? No. So, yeah, it's not connecting with me. I don't want to pay to watch her wrestle. And who is your competition? Who is she up against? None of her opponents seem really important. The only one I would say is Rhea Ripley, but I don't know what they're doing with her at all.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the whole thing is that it's crazy. It's one of those like, well, they're losing Rhea Ripley because she's going to Raw. If you didn't see the vignettes this week or whatever, I think she's making her Raw debut this coming week or next week. So
Okay. That's, and again, because of how they've treated past NXT wrestlers, I don't know what they're going to do with Rhea Ripley. I have no faith that Raw's going to handle her well.
Bianca Belair has the rocket strapped to her right now. She's going to be in one of the high-profile matches on one of the nights of WrestleMania against Sasha Banks for the SmackDown Women's title.
Did they
Uh,
actually announce Sasha Banks?
I not yet, but it's I think it's one of those matches where they have it in like permanent marker on the whiteboard at WWE HQ that's going to happen. So
And that would be a pretty good match to see, but I mean, they'd have to build it up a lot more.
yeah, I mean they're doing buddy buddy right now, but don't forget there's also a pay-per-view in March. Fastlane's on March 21st, so
But
they're
the
they're
thing is,
building for that.
what intrigues me about that match is that there's both have this attitude and this ego about them. I want to see that. I want to see the
Yeah,
boss versus the EST, not the two friends who are like,
you
"Yay, we're winning and we're
you'll
doing things."
you'll probably see that
Ugh.
post Fastlane, but the problem is then that only gives them about 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks now because Mania is later this year to build it compared to the full month and a half that you would have normally. So and again, WWE is not a wrestling company per se anymore. WWE is a content creator, so they're just creating content to get eyes on their content, whether
Yeah,
it's
but
5 seconds or
people,
5 minutes.
yeah, but are they never going to realize that people don't just consume content because it's content? That people want good content?
Yeah, I mean, the only way that happens is if the ratings for all three shows tank and the public stock decides to go, reverse GameStop, if you know what I mean. So,
Yes, but I mean, in terms of tanking ratings, think about going all the way back to when like Austin and The Rock were on top in the Attitude Era. Raw and Nitro were pulling tens. They were pulling tens. If
yeah,
you took right now Raw, NXT, SmackDown, AEW, Impact all together wouldn't equal a 10.
no, no.
So
No, if
you've
it
never
wouldn't even
had.
equal a 5 right now. I think we would be looking if all of the offshoots, if all of the companies that currently have national TV deals were on one channel, one network, and it was all the same show, you'd probably be lucky to get maybe pull a 2 or free every week with the amount of people who are watching.
Exactly. Do you see the decline of just wrestling in general? You
Yes.
had 20 between Nitro and Raw, and now split amongst three different shows on WWE and two other competitors. Like you said, a three, maybe four if you're being generous.
Yep. Well,
That's a major drop. How does that not relate to them? Hey, maybe we need to improve.
there's a variety of factors too that you can look at it that have caused that. I mean, that we're living in the post 9/11 world where that was. Do you believe anything on a so-called predetermined pro wrestling program, and then all of a sudden the biggest event in American history basically happens in front of your eyes where people fly airplanes into the World Trade Center? I mean, no wrestling angle is going to compete with that because that's real life. And again, this year or this past year, the pandemic. Again, one of the biggest news stories of our lifetime. And how are they going to compete? How is pro wrestling going to compete with CNN and all these news networks? They're getting monster ratings, and the reason why they're getting monster ratings is because everybody's watching them to find out the latest updates from Dr. Fauci on whether masks are good or whatever, and what's happening in different states, and before the election what the hell Orange Man is doing, and then now lack of Orange Man. So
Okay, but that being said, this being the pandemic era of our lifetime, um, people wanted escapism because they had nothing to do while they're locked up in their house. So entertainment was a huge thing.
mm-hmm.
Streaming sites absolutely went up. Shows on Netflix and movies on Netflix or Amazon Prime, they skyrocketed. Disney Plus, same thing. But at the same time, sports, like people still tuned in their millions to watch the Super Bowl.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, those ratings continued to go up. And what happened to wrestling? Went down.
Yeah, went down. Yeah.
I mean, there's every single year, the Super Bowl will get more and more viewers. It doesn't really dip, but WrestleMania is going to go down in viewers every single year.
Yeah.
How are they ignoring these numbers? They can try to validate it or justify it with these, what you were saying of competing against the important things in life. But if wrestling is supposed to be escapism, they're losing to all the other forms of escapism.
No, I agree with you, because here's the thing is that WWE has tried their own over the top network. They've tried it for now 6 or 7 years, and we've seen the results for it. So now they have basically said to another over the top network in the States, Peacock, NBC, here, have at our library. You guys take care of this. So now you can watch the same stuff that you used to be able to watch on WWE Network is going to end up in the States on Peacock, so people can watch, I don't know, the reruns of Parks and Rec and a few other things, prior to WrestleMania on April 10th.
Interesting. By the way, Peacock would be anything that was NBC created, right?
Yes, exactly. So I
That's a
think
huge catalog.
Yeah, I think Parks and Rec qualifies. The American version of The Office, don't forget as well. That's a NBC property. Um,
Friends. Nope.
Friends, yeah.
Frasier.
Frasier, yeah. You
Yeah.
name it.
Office, Parks and Rec, Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, NBC had some killer shows in the 90s.
Yes, exactly. And what's to stop somebody from doing a 6-hour binge now in April of let's watch, I don't know, an hour of Fresh Prince followed by WrestleMania night one, and then I'm going to stay up and fall asleep to my favorite episode of The Office.
Yeah, I guess.
So, there's that way. Or somebody tunes into, and it could also work this way. Somebody tunes in to watch WrestleMania on night two, wasn't enamored with night one, but then all of a sudden sees that, oh, look at that. They have, a full playlist of all of the latest Parks and Rec shows. So I'm going to watch that instead because I missed on this night, and this night.
Yeah, but I mean, it is all on demand stuff, right? So I mean, you can just watch it whenever.
Whenever,
I
but
don't
I'm
know.
just saying.
But going back to the whole point of things is that I think people have become very just uninterested with wrestling. It seems that way anyways, because just like I said, the ratings keep going down when other competition of television has been going up. So I don't know if it's validated. It's like, well, if you take back then and you compare it to now, everything's going down. So, well, not really.
Yeah.
WWE, I think, has completely lost sight of what they were trying to accomplish, or I guess at its core, what wrestling is all about.
Mm-hmm. So, what's the hottest thing right now that people are watching right now?
What is the
Just across the
hottest thing
board.
people are watching right now?
Yeah. What are they watching right now? What's the big thing that grabs? What's the big service that everybody watches because it's a pandemic? It's basically anything that has a Netflix brand on it. And that
Yes,
brand,
but
Netflix alone.
Netflix is selective. I mean, people understand what are good shows, what are bad shows, and the numbers will show as to what brings up big numbers and what doesn't.
Exactly. There's not that system doesn't exist for pro wrestling. It never has. because pro wrestling is opinionated and pro wrestling is selective. I could think that, a certain show is great, and then you could watch the same show and be like, no, it was terrible.
Yes.
Whereas, if you watch Tiger King, you're watching Tiger King because your friends watched Tiger King and they were fans of Tiger King. So in turn, you got to see what this is all about. And then you can go and talk to them on a water cooler or through Zoom or whatever, telephone, telegraph, I don't know, smoke signal about Tiger King, right? So that's the one thing that pro wrestling is missing right now is, within the community, like on Twitter and that stuff, people talk about hot matches or bad angles or whatever. But if you try to talk to somebody in normal life about this and that stuff, they'll look at you like you have a second head growing out of your neck.
But why is that?
I think it's just a stigma of wrestling not being popular. So
Right, but it goes back to why isn't wrestling popular now when it used to draw 20 on a Monday night?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's the variety of factors throughout the years. It could have been when WWE beat WCW and bought them finally in 2001. It could have been, a week later at WrestleMania when Austin turned for the first time and had that happen. It could have been the Benoit murder suicide. It could have been a whole bunch of stuff. So
Nope, I'll tell you exactly where it was.
yep, go ahead.
I
I
can
just have to
actually
do
tell you
something.
exactly where it was. It's when Rock and Austin left, because those are the last two compelling characters. Now, you did mention something just a while ago that completely hit me like a trigger, was that you said like Tiger King is like people will watch it, some people will hate it, some people will love it, but everyone will watch it because in one way or another, it is compelling television.
Yes.
It is something that is interesting. You may hate it, you may absolutely love it, but but in one way or the other, you were entertained by what you saw.
Mm-hmm.
Wrestling hasn't been that basically since, for the large majority of people, since The Rock and Austin left.
Mm-hmm.
And those who came in to fill the spots, just be honest, did not fill it enough.
No. I mean, you had John Cena do his thing, and that was kind of, it was admirable what he accomplished. But if you grew out of his age group that he appealed to, that basically was it. The older superstars finally retired, guys like Undertaker, Kane. Big Show is still active, but not as much as he used to be. Guys along that type of ilk. And then, even the guys that they were building up during the 2000s had different issues. Eddie Guerrero unfortunately passed before his time. You had guys like JBL who were just, basically your old school wrestling heel, which caters to wrestling fans, but not so much out into the main marketplace and whatever. Triple H, too inconsistent. I think, he had the belt, but one title reign he's a heel, next title reign he's a face, next title reign he's a heel, etc., etc. So yeah.
Well, to be honest, I think it was supposed to be Triple H who was taking over as soon as The Rock and Austin had left WWE.
I think,
he couldn't fill those shoes because he's Triple H.
Yeah.
He's not compelling. I'm sorry. He's not a compelling
he
act.
Never was. Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
His wrestling is nothing spectacular. His promos are long, drawn out, and boring. He spits the water, and that's the best thing he's ever done. Mm-hmm. Yay. Like, he's not compelling on television.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, kind of, neither was John Cena, to be honest.
No, that's the same deal. So that's
his wrestling was subpar, and his promos and everything else is just like, okay, he looks like a man boy with his hat and his t-shirt and his jorts and his "I'm gonna do it, everybody," like that kind of attitude. It's just like, buddy, you're a loser. Like, why am I looking at this? This is just this junk.
Yeah.
Literally, the only compelling person that happened after The Rock and Stone Cold was CM Punk. That
Yeah.
was compelling television.
Yeah, and even with Punk, you had to, from a corporate standpoint, you had to put a leash on him because you had no idea which direction he was going to go when you gave him the mic. So that's the thing, you know. It was fun for us as fans watching him, but
But he also got people into watch because it was a little bit exciting again. Like,
oh yeah,
hey, this guy's a little bit different.
out of everything we discussed, these are just all huge factors, I would say, in why, even a grander scale, the trickle down effect, as we sit here in, well, basically March of 2021, at NXT, not being able to compete with a startup like AEW, and then both companies
I
not
wouldn't,
getting
you
great
know what though?
numbers, but
I would not say that they're not competing with AEW because they are.
yeah,
And the thing is, if you add up AEW's viewership against any NXT viewership every single week, you're basically only getting 1.5 million people. It's the
yes,
same group.
yeah,
They just
it
kind of
is.
float between each other.
Yep.
But between them, all they're grabbing is 1.5 million viewers in to watch. That's it. So it's not like they're really getting outside viewers to come in and watch this thing. And to me, that's a bit
Mm-hmm.
concerning.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's definitely a concerning trend going forward. I really don't know how this can be righted right away. I think it's going to be a process where it'll take, definitely a year or two, or whatever, for it to get back on track, because I think the return to live venues will help. And I think that once they get the green light to do so, with like bigger venues, where we can tour and get people back into buildings, I think it'll help. It'll start the process. I'm not sure how big of a help it will be, but I think it will help in some way or fashion. But again, yeah, it's the whole thing where wrestling just isn't in vogue. People will back what's vogue. People will back what's popular right now. And another thing that is super popular right now is memes, and the ability to go onto Twitter, watch a 15-second video, get a dopamine kick of whatever, and you know go on to the next thing, right? And unless we start having super short matches that have two individuals go in there for 10 seconds and then we have a winner, that's going to be an awful tough sell to sell to people.
You know what though? But I think if you break it down like that, it's wrestling completely lost its way because, in a sense, people will always be interested in or pay money to see a conflict that is then resolved through some form of violence. People will always pay to watch that. People will always be interested by that. But for some reason, wrestling lost its way of that not being the core of what they do anymore. Like that's always going to be an
Yeah,
interesting story of one person against another person for a reason.
for sure.
That's
Yeah.
wrestling at its core, and I just don't know where this all went. Maybe it did get washed out by all these things of memes and funny things and likes and clicks and Facebook, Twitter retweets and whatever that's going on. But like at its core,
Mm-hmm.
people want to see two people fight each other. And in wrestling, you get to see that. And if it's done right, they don't really hurt each other. They could tell a story.
Right. That's the big conflict of it. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I had a point that I was going to take off of the back end of this, and I just lost where the point was. But
Much
it's
like WWE.
yeah. It also doesn't help when the booking is inconsistent too. It's kind of like one of those things where that's
Well, I think
maybe the art form is passe. Maybe it's something, or it's like something that it'll eventually slowly I hate to admit it, but it'll be slowly dying out and it'll be passe. And then, in 20 years, we're watching, I don't know, Robot Wars or something instead.
I don't really believe in that, because I don't think the art form's passe.
I
I think
mean,
people will still pay to watch something. I mean, like, movies aren't passe, and it's all fake, quote unquote. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, it's predetermined what the script of the movie is going to be. Yeah, right. So,
yeah, but I mean, it's like, it's the story. If you can get someone involved into the story of the conflict, that's all you need. Somewhere along the line, wrestling became, how do we get people to like our stuff? How do we get likes? How do we get clicks? How do we get people to get some form of any reaction? We don't care if it's good. We don't care if it's bad. How do we get a like out of this?
mm-hmm.
I know comedy. I know memes. I know pop culture references for absolutely no reason with zero context. It's like, all this is junk. And it's showing that it's junk because these numbers keep dwindling. It's like, get back to the core of what you were supposed to do. And for anybody to say, like, well, why would that still work? It's like, look at stand-up comedy. The art form hasn't changed in decades. It is a person on a stage with a microphone telling their jokes, and the way that they tell it in different ways, be it through stories or with their own animations, their own twist, whatever. People will still watch stand-up comedy, and it is still one of the biggest things on Netflix.
Yeah, stand-up comedy actually through the pandemic has undergone some like a resurgence of sorts. Uh, the stand-up comics and that stuff have gone basically virtual and have sold like virtual Zoom sessions and
Yeah,
Twitch streams and stuff like that out to people to cover for their lost income from clubs and everything like that. And now we're at the point where some clubs are starting to open back up again, and live performances at some places can happen again, and this and that. So yeah, it's something that definitely, through hook or crook has done it. So, man, this was this was a heavy discussion. It turned right from trying to understand what NXT is to, like,
what is wrestling?
what is wrestling,
Yeah, this went on a thesis.
uh, and it's crazy. I'm dying here.
That's right. That's right. I'm just gonna yawn as you choke to death.
We have a house full above and that stuff, just due to a parent's birthday and everything. So if that's the noise that you hear in the background, that's how it is. But again, just wanted to put some content out there and talk. But everybody, feel free to comment below if any of this made any sense to anyone. And
Oh, absolutely not. This is all over the place. This was and I loved it.
it was such a wandering conversation, but no, it was great. So anyways, later days, happy wrestling watching. Kind of ironic to say that after we just browbeated the entire industry for about 20-25 minutes, but sometimes you need to rant things out, I guess. And whatever.
There's the frustration of a wrestling fan, I tell you.
I want to end it on a positive note, though, is regardless what happens, we remain fans and we are passionate. We want to see it succeed, and that's why we are passionate, and we want to see it succeed, and that's why we say the things we say. Damn it.
And I agree with that.
So everybody just pull up the frickin' bootstraps and sell, damn it.
Don't get me started on selling. No, positive note.
And I guess I should come full circle and just ask, has any of the past 45 minutes or so enlightened you on what NXT is at this point, or not?
I feel like if I keep talking, I'm going to dig a bigger hole.
So it's just time to just bail out at this point.
Yep.
Okay, I'm fair enough to do that. So, later days, happy wrestling watching, folks. Hit me up on Twitter at Kellen Nitro, and yeah, I'll make sure that anything towards him goes to him. And you can, basically put in the comments below. We'll both see it. So,
I'll be in hiding eating ice cream sandwiches.
are those WWE ice cream sandwiches or no?
God, I miss those WWE ice cream bars. CM Punk never did get those.
No, he never did.
What a shame. I
Becky
tell
Lynch
you.
got one though.
Did she really?
She did, yeah.
Okay, no more extensions. No more extensions. Goodbye, everybody. Yay!